Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Masterclass number 3. We have a whole pack of information that we're going to cover. Welcome. At the end, we're going to answer your questions, but we're going to dive right in. We're going to cover admissions and move-ins, assessment, pricing, paperwork. If I have time, I'll go over the 1823 form with you. It's one of those forms that you must know. You can't survive without knowing that form, okay? So today we're going to cover pretty much your move-in process. I find that to be the hardest thing for people, especially if you are very new, and typically there is this big cloud over the move-in process. You could have done all of the hard work with going out there, finding a resident, and getting them to realize how much of a benefit it will be for them to join your ALF. And then when it's time to move in, it's like you're having panic attack because you don't know what that process is. And how do I know? Because I was once I got licensed, got myself open, and that first resident moving in is like, it's joyful, but then it's a nightmare because you don't know, you're not sure about things. And then beyond that, now I help clients get their license throughout the state of Florida, and it's a common issue that everyone is having. So I'm excited to help you get rid of those anxieties because you know exactly what you need to do. So today we're going to learn how to admit your first resident, the 1823 form, what it is, red flags to avoid, what it should look like, when to say yes, you can take this resident, when to say no, you cannot, and how to have conversations with the family members, because sometimes the doctor will do one thing, the family doesn't know what that one thing means. So being able to have those conversations with both the doctor and the family members will help you tremendously. Power of attorneys, healthcare surrogates, some pitfalls to avoid, hospice providers, how you can use them for your benefit. It's a win-win for you and your client. Resident agreements, how to properly position the resident agreement, and also how to present your prices confidently. Poor placement, how to deal with placement professionals that bring you client, and then poor placement, meaning the wrong resident at your ALF, how to deal with those issues. Resident rights, notices, and avoiding complaints. And of course, you can be as proactive as possible, but dealing with complaints is something that you have to know how to deal with. It doesn't matter if you have been managing for 15 years or you're just now getting into this business. Today's meeting is for you, because at the end of the day, rules change, customers' behaviors become different, and sometimes you can be in the business for so long, but then you forget how things are supposed to be done, especially if you're not like me, where you're reading regulations on a daily basis, sometimes because you want to stay up to date, sometimes because you're required to do so, because I serve client and I'm in between so many issues on behalf of my clients. Okay. So section 1 is how to admit your first resident. We're going to cover what happens on your first inquiry. So typically the way that you get your leads pipelines, they're either going to come from you as an individual doing your own marketing, your footprint, online marketing. We had a class already that covered. So this is class number 3. So if you haven't seen class number 1 and 2, I highly recommend you go and visit those. So the way that you get clients pretty much from your physical networking and marketing in the community, and also your online footprint. And we covered those on another training. I don't remember exactly which one it is. Your online footprint, or you can have placement professionals that bring you clients. So typically when a lead comes to you, it would be in the form as so-and-so need an ALF. They are 70 years old. Here's their medical history. This is how much the budget is. And do you have a female or a male bed? And once you say yes or no to these requirements, they meet your budget. You already know, okay, for my shared bed, these 2 people needs to bring me a minimum of X amount. So that's why the placement professional will give you the amount that the client can afford to pay. Now, if the client is not coming from a placement professional, you're going to have to get those information from the client themselves. So for example, if the lead is coming from a mom who lives lives at home and daughter is reaching out to you because something happened and now she can't take care of mom anymore. Now you need to pull that information out of her. You need to ask for mom's age, her medical history, how much is her budget, when is the anticipation date of moving in, who is her power of attorney, who makes decisions for her. All of those things you need to ask. If the placement agent is bringing the client to you, the placement agent would have already provided you with that information. And that is one of the reasons why you want to have relationship with placement professionals, because it's almost like they let you know what you should be doing when it comes to those first conversations with a resident in their family. But at the end of the day, the way that you treat that resident and their family member from that very initial conversation, your confidence level, and then you invite them to come out and do a tour to see your ALF. You have those conversations throughout the tour about who you are, your staff, what you do, and your values and your mission. The tour should not be, this is room number 2 and we can take 2 people. No, as you are touring your ALF, you're also letting this family member know what the culture is. And this could be your first resident. Those rules remain the same. So it could be that first resident, your conversation will be, oh, David will be so spoiled because he will be king of the hill, or Joanne will be so spoiled, she will be king of the hill, as they are the first child and everything will be, of course they're not, you're using that as a metaphor. They will get all of the attention. So have this conversation, break the walls, and let them know, hey, we're touring this week, all this week. If that's true, we're touring, we're showing the ALF to other people. And even if David is the first client, he will not be the first client for too long as we are continuing to tour the place. Oftentimes you'll get pushback like, can we wait for David to move in? Do your best not to let them wait, because everyone is going to want to wait. So move them in, let them know that you will work with local churches that will do activities, hospice professionals that can do activities. We will keep him busy. We will take him to the mall, whatever. What does he like to do? While he is there as the first person here, we will make sure to keep him busy. Things like that, okay? Move your first client in. So that's what that looks like, what that process looks like. And then what are the must steps you must do? You must do follow-ups. So if you will know based on the body language of the person, if your ALF is the it. If you made them feel welcome, they are very focused on bringing mom and dad to an ALF that have good people. Let them see your personality. I'm very bubbly, and even on a tired day, my energy is higher than most people. I let them see that because I can't hide who I am. But if they happen to love who I am already, it's a win-win. And typically they do. People, they can sense you're a good person. You educate them. They want to see that you are educated, that you can make decisions. When something happens, even in the worst case scenarios, you know what to do. You're not going to drive them crazy. Doing that tour, let them see all of that. Once they are confident, also have a little gift for them. I used to have little gift. If it's hot outside, we live in South Florida, I'd have, for example, a handwritten note, a brochure about my ALF, and also a bottle of cold water that I would give, and let them know what it would be like for them to do this process with you. For example, if you see that this is a great fit for John, here's what I'm going to need. I'm going to need a resident agreement. I'm going to need a couple of paperwork signed. We need to establish a moving date. We need to establish how much items he can bring with him. And I'd love for you to bring those personal things that he likes that will make it very homey for him. And because of, for example, fire safety regulations, we can only have so many items, but I promise to work with you to get the items that John most value. Conversations like that should be happening throughout the tour so that when the person is moving in, everything is already up to par, right? So those are the steps that you should follow. Common mistakes people make: they don't communicate. They assume the family member knows what should be done. They assume the family member is judging them. They assume the family member should know. Don't do it. Educate that family member. Oftentimes they have no idea about anything in senior care, and they don't typically reach out to ALFs or even placement professionals until something happens. So don't assume that they know. Present yourself as the leader that you are. car confidently. Even when discussing your prices, do it confidently. And also answer their questions. Let them walk away with your contact information as well, so that they can already feel like you are already part of their team, taking care of mom and dad. So this is what your admission process is. Section 2, we're going to cover the 1823 health assessment form. That is the form that determines everything. So far we've covered you get a lead, what to do with the lead, what to do with the tour, and now you know this person is moving in. Now that we know this person is moving in, we have to have a certain number of documents signed. Now, do not overwhelm the resident and their families, because there's quite a bit of paperwork in your admissions records. And sometimes, depending on where the person is, if you could see that you will know. If something just happened to mom and they had to find an ALF, they're probably overwhelmed. If they've been looking for a while, they already know what the process is. They are likely to want to sit down and fill out a pack of paperwork. If they are overwhelmed, I have a form that I'm going to show you, the minimum pieces of paperwork that you need so that the client can move in. Have them complete those minimum amount of paperwork. If they are not overwhelmed, have them complete the entire paperwork. If they are overwhelmed, but they live out of state, have them complete your entire paperwork, because you are going to have a hard time for them to finish the rest of your paperwork. So I hope this was clear enough. What is the 1823 form? It's the health assessment form that you are supposed to know how it should look like. It is the legality between you admitting a resident and you not being able to admit a resident. It has to be completed fully, and you have to know what it should look like when it's done correctly, because some doctors will fill out this form not knowing that, the information that they put will prevent the resident from being able to be admitted to the ALF, and the family member may not know that either. So you, as the administrator, you are responsible for knowing what that 1823 form should look like and when to say yes and no. You cannot accept that resident. So I'm going to show you what the 1823 form looks like. Okay, so this is the 1823 health assessment form, and I'm going to focus more. Remember, the entire form have to be completed. There cannot be no blank. If it's blank, it has to be an a dash, something. It cannot be blank, okay? So you have the resident information up here. You have the facility information, and the facility information is your facility information, and it has some instructions on here. This is the area where the doctor begins to complete. So typically, let's say, for example, the resident is moving in, but I already have my own facility doctor. I can have my facility doctor complete this form. So I'm going to complete the resident information, the facility information, and the facility doctor will complete the rest of the form. If the resident is coming from another ALF, their facility doctor can complete this form, or you can have your own doctor complete that form. Now, you do not need to have a 1823 form completed in order to accept a resident, as long as you, as the administrator, went and physically assessed and made sure that the resident fit your admissions criteria. Okay, so there's a lot for you to know as the administrator to be able to make that decision. Okay, once you have gone, you see that you made a physical assessment of the resident. So it's not just the 1823 form that is necessary. Your physical assessment of the resident is necessary, and usually that's one of the first steps that takes place. So you're introduced to the family, you tour the place, tour your ALF, they establish that you and them are going to do business together, and now you're going to go and schedule a time to make a physical visit as the administrator to assess mom or dad or whoever the loved one is. At this point, you can have the resident move into your ALF because you physically assessed and made sure that resident meets criteria. And then you have 30 days to get the 1823 health assessment form completed by your doctor. Okay. Now, typically, to keep things clean, you'll do everything at once. You'll get the 1823 form done because because things happen, you forget. And if that health assessment form is not done within 30 days of that client moving in, you're in trouble with ACA. And all deficiencies are public records. Okay, so you go and the doctor will complete this area. Everything have to be completed. If there's nothing to put there, they're gonna put NA, and it's your job to make sure that these information are completed. If they are elopement risks, this is another area you want to pay attention to. If they are elopement risk, you want to have the proper, you already have elopement policies and procedures, and you're going to do elopement drills as part of your requirements for having a licensed ALF. But if a client is not elopement risk, if a client is elopement risk, you have to make sure your facility is properly positioned to accept this client. Do you have a gate, right? These are things that you need to do in order to prevent issues with liabilities and lawsuits and all of those things that come up. If the client is known to wander, to find a way to get out of their ALF or get out of their homes, you want to be able to make sure you assess your own plan. Am I properly structured to accept this resident? Do I have a gate? Everyone should have alarm doors. Is it easy for my clients to open that door, right? So typically you want to have, and I don't remember what it's called, but it makes it a little harder for the door to be open so that a resident who is already frail won't easily open your doors, right? How is your locking mechanism? Do you have alarm doors? Also, there are like black carpets, for example, for people with dementia who tend to wander. You put it in front of the door and they think it's a hole, they won't go in there. What are the strategies that you're using so that you can accept this resident and be able to be at peace, knowing that this resident will be safe? So here you can see to be completed by facility, resident name, date of birth, authorized representative. That would be, for example, your administrator's information. Health assessment continue. This is another area that you need to pay attention to. This is the area here, section A, that determines a lot of things. Are you able to accept this resident? I have seen 1823 forms that have all these sections completed as they need assistance. This is the section that you need to pay attention to, right? So for example, ideally a resident would need like 3 ADLs, activities of daily living. These are these right here. So independent means it shows in here, staff does not need to assist the resident. Can the resident do anything for themselves? S needs supervision, right? Staff provide cueing or prompting, but the resident will be able to complete the action. Needs assistant, right? Staff provide physical assistance with the resident participation. Total care, right? And as an ALF, you cannot accept a resident that is total care. That is a nursing home resident. So you want to pay attention to this area and this area right here, the A and the T, right? So as the doctor completes this, he's going to check mark out of all of these, where does the resident fall? If you have a resident that have check marks for everything under total care, you cannot take this resident. If you have a resident that needs, for example, they need bathing, they need assistance to bathe. Are they able to help them put their clothes on, right? Resident that may need help with bathing, are they not able to help bathe themselves at all? This area right here, they need assistance. You should have about 3 at the most. For total assistance, you should have maybe 1, but it is a red flag. When you look over here, you see they need total assistance for everything. It's also a red flag when you look over here under section A, they need total assistance for everything. It should be a mix of, okay? And that's how you know whether or not you can accept this resident. Also, dieting is a major factor. This is where you work with your dietitian to make sure that you are able to meet the resident's dietary needs. So if they are on a regular diet and they don't have anything special that they're asking that your dietitian cannot work with you, well, let me move back a little. So typically you will get a standard ALF menu, and as you gain more residents, you can work with your dietitian to let your dietitian pediatrician know, hey, my residents like this kind of taste. Can you tweak the menu to meet their taste? Okay. The number of calories, that is usually not a problem. No salt added. A low fat diet. So if it's not a regular diet, you need to have a doctor's order. So if it is not a regular diet that the client has to eat, you need to have a doctor's order that states, right, that this person, based on their health status, they needs to be in this type of diet. And you're going to take this doctor's order and you're going to place it in the resident file, and you're going to feed that resident according to what that order says. Okay. If it says calorie control, the doctor's order will say what it is. In your menu, when you cook the food, pretty much the way that you cook the food, you'll cook it, and you're not gonna, if you know you have a resident, or depending on how many resident you know have that can't eat salt, for example, you'll cook the food no salt, or you'll cook separate food. Remember, you are a residential ALF where you're caring for up to anywhere from 5 to like 10 or even 15 people. So if you're in a smaller 5 resident, you may want to cook that one resident food separately. If you are like a 10, 15 bed resident, you may want to cook each food for each person according to their dietary needs. And you have to have the doctor's order. Health status. You also want to pay attention to this area. If they have any communicable diseases, you know you cannot accept that resident, right? Because it will affect the other residents. In fact, even for your staff, when you are accepting new staff, they have to do a health assessment form. And that's one of the questions that you have to answer. You have to have a statement, even for your staff, that they don't have any communicable diseases. Okay. So pay attention to this area. Are they bedridden? You know you cannot accept a resident who is bedridden. So if all of this is yes, you know you cannot accept this resident. Okay. If they are bedridden, you cannot take them. If they have a stage 3, 4, or even a stage 2, at a stage 2, you can accept the resident, but you have to make sure that you work with either a nurse or a home health agency or staffing agency that can send you a nurse to take care of that stage 2 pressure sores. Because if it doesn't improve within 30 days, you'll have to discharge that resident. Okay. And there are things that you can do to help with getting that resident healed. For example, if you feed them protein, make sure they're hydrated, make sure a nurse is taking care of the wound, and that they are documenting the progress. The wounds have to get better. If it doesn't get better, you'll have to discharge that resident. And you want to be a good person and not accept people who don't fit. I know in the beginning, I was new and I have no medical background. I did not accept anybody that had any wounds. If they had any type of wounds, I did not accept. I wanted to make sure I was confident first before I accept anybody that had a wound. Now, you are getting a head start because you're getting all this education. I didn't have all this education. I had to learn as I go. So pay attention. Stage 3, you cannot accept. Stage 4, you cannot accept. Okay. So pay attention to these things. Stage 2, you can, with those conditions I mentioned, they have to get better. And you have to have progress notes showing that they are getting better. If they are not getting better, you have to discharge them. Okay. Pose a danger to self or anyone else, you know you cannot take them. Require 24-hour nursing supervision or psychiatric care, you cannot accept. Okay. So this area right here should all be no, with the exception of maybe the stage 2. And you have to have this question answered. Okay. This is the doctor saying, do they believe this resident fit to be inside of an ALF? Okay. It has to be a yes. If it is not a yes, you cannot accept this resident. And down here is pretty much what's going on with the resident. Typically, they will all need assistance with, their medication. They'll check what it is, and depending on what it is, able to self-administer, need assistance. And we won't go into this right now, but assistance with medication is not you putting the medication in the client's mouth. Need medication administration. So if they need medication administration, if you're a nurse, because of your nursing hat, you'll be able to give them their medication and you'll be okay. If you are not not a nurse, you need to work with a nurse to be able to come give this client their medication, okay? Because as a regular person with no nursing credential, like I fell into when I was introduced into the ALF industry, I would not accept people that needs medication administration. Could I? Yes. But I didn't want to have to depend on an outside person for something that happens so often. You know, medication is, you know, sometimes several times per day. And so there are certain individuals I simply did not accept because I wanted to make sure that I would be okay taking care of that client and my staff would be okay taking care of that client. And down here have to be fully completed. And as you can see, these are the people that can sign this form. If they are not these people, they cannot sign this form. And if they did sign this form, it is invalid. Okay. So a typical LPN cannot sign this. And not to make it sound like it's a problem because they're an LPN, because nursing school is hard. But according to this form, it cannot be done, okay? Examination date is very important. We know that oftentimes client will come to you from another ALF and they'll say, oh, they already have an 1823 form. If that 1823 form is 60 days old, you cannot take it. You need a new one. And you know you can accept the client even if that form is old. You just have to do your own form because remember you have 30 days to do it. So while we are on this, I'm going to show you the minimum criteria you need to have to admit a resident. So remember earlier we had a little discussion about if someone is overwhelmed, what is the minimum amount of files that you need in order to accept a new resident? You need the informed consent, you need your resident agreement, visitation policy, and the visitation policy is just on the bottom of it. They sign that they received visitation policy and your evacuation agreement. Your evacuation agreement is pretty much doing an emergency. You have family members that would want to pick mom and dad up to go live with them. That don't usually happen, okay? So doing that emergency time, you want to have it signed so that you know, okay, so when I'm evacuating, I'm taking everybody with me. If I am not taking everybody with me, so these following residents are going to get picked up and you'll have a deadline when they have to be picked up by. Because once your emergency management plan has been activated, you need to move quick. You need to get to your location. A photograph consent and your demographic. So your photograph consent is something that I came up with that gives you the grounds to be able to take pictures, share them on your Google business page. So when the person put your address, they can see how lively your ALF is, how happy your residents and your staff is. I like to capture pictures and videos. I naturally like to do that. So when I opened my own ALF, I came up with my form. And if I helped you get your license, you have that form on your resident agreements. But nonetheless, the demographics is pretty much your POA, power of attorney, who's in charge. If there's an emergency, who am I contacting on behalf of this resident? That's what that one is. All right, this was great. I will see you guys either in the Thriving Circle or the next meeting next month. Bye now. Have a good one.